Welcome to the show. My name is Clark Sharati. Tonight on African Knowledge, it's our Lawyers' Night. Every last Thursday of the month, we will be talking to either one or more lawyers in relation to matters affecting our communities in general, anything that is relevant to members of the community. We encourage you, if you're watching, to also perhaps think of questions that you may have, that you may need some sort of guidance from lawyers, and you could ask some of those questions. More about this in a moment, just after this. Thank you very much. And thank you again for all those of you who take time to send us feedback about the show and the content that we are providing. We do encourage you to continue to do that because it gives us some food for thoughts and how we can improve what we are doing. So, my guest tonight is Maker Mayek, who's a lawyer. And if you've been watching what we're doing, he was with us a little over 4 weeks ago. And he's with us tonight. Good evening, Maker. How are you today?
Good evening, Clyde. I'm very well, thank you, and good evening, viewers.
No worries. All right. So tonight we'll be talking essentially about two things. We'll touch on the what we discussed last time, which was about mandatory vaccination and its impact or effect on employment, because we know that more and more industries, more and more businesses and companies are now requesting that their employees get the shot, and if they fail to do that, they will lose their job. And obviously, there are people in the community who still have reservations, concerns over the vaccine. The majority of people are taking the vaccine, and the actual rate of vaccination is improving, is going. I mean, very close to what the government is expecting, both in Victoria and other state governments in Australia. However, it's an issue that continues to have its relevance because some people who do not wish to be vaccinated are being forced to leave their job. So we'll touch on a little bit of that. But do encourage you, if you're watching, if you have questions on this, please feel free to ask those questions. You can do so through comments. You can also, if you want to call, we'll put a number on the screen. Send us a text message first that you would like to call and ask your questions or your question or make a comment, and we will organize that and we'll call you and to enable you to do that. So, Maker, 4 weeks ago we discussed this topic, and at the time, obviously, it wasn't quite clear what was going to happen in relation to that. But I think things have kind of escalated, if I would use that word. It's gotten worse.
Indeed,
what,
indeed,
what have you been able to put together since then?
indeed, things have escalated. As if you can see in New South Wales, the trajectory over the last few weeks have been the COVID infections have gone. Have been consistently over 1,000.
Mm.
Victoria now has entered over 1,000 cases. So, indeed, the cases have escalated, as well as the rates of vaccination. As we speak, in Victoria, with the single dose has already gone over 70%, and we are in over 40% in double dose. That really shows the where things are in terms of the urgency of the vaccination in the state. Now,
Yeah.
coming back to the core question,
Hmm.
whether which is what we discussed last time about employment and how it may affect our viewers and our community, the African community in particular. As I indicated last time, the issue of vaccination remains as a state issue. It's still regulated by the state law. So what that means is that every state will have to make its own decisions as to what the sort of directions that they will give to curb or to
Hmm.
mitigate the infections or the rates of death or the effects of COVID and
Yeah.
the rates of and the vaccination, generally speaking, in their own state. Now, here, particularly in Victoria, we've got the Public Health and Wellbeing Act, which is the main source of law here in Victoria,
Hmm.
which can be used by the state authorities to um, to mandate vaccine the administration of vaccine. So far as we know, there has been that has been communicated out in the last couple of weeks, and it's particular areas or industries that are currently being targeted. So there is no general mandate making the vaccine mandatory for all employees to be vaccinated in order to go back to work. But industries such as residential care, um, um, uh, areas where vulnerable people are work are currently being mandated, and there's a list out there. So, in short, Clyde, there is no there is no mandate yet for all the employees to be vaccinated, but there are particular industries at the moment where directions have been issued where it's compulsory for that person to be for an employee to be vaccinated in order for them to be there, and that's because they work with the vulnerable people.
Yeah. So obviously, we discussed a little bit of this, as you said earlier, and we understand that some industries are sort of pushing for that. But for those people who are in those industries, for example, we know that in the health industry, there's a lot of Africans who are employed, whether as personal care assistants or nurse or doctors, and the number is quite high in that industry, and that is an industry where actually now not just in aged care facilities, but pretty much all across the health system. Even today, actually, because my wife is a nurse, she got an email where the government is advising that all nurses, everyone in the hospital system now in Victoria, has to either get vaccinated or show that they've made a booking by the 15th of October. So, and there seems still to be a bit of confusion, because when you look at what the federal government is saying, and even I mean, when you go on the internet, whether it's federal government or even state government, they're still saying that a vaccine is not mandatory. However, they're still asking people to, in at least in these industries that we've mentioned, to get the job or lose the job. How does that get conciliated?
Mm. Um, we really need to make this distinction very clear, Clyde.
Mm.
Making sure where the powers of the federal, of the Commonwealth, and the state where they lie. Now,
Mm-hmm.
as I said time and again, the issue of vaccination is
It's all
not a
state.
Commonwealth issue; it's a state-based issue, and every
Yeah.
state is going to be making its decision in terms of which industries are going to be mandated and which industries will be required, will be where the rules will be relaxed and where people will be making discretionary decisions in whether they want to be vaccinated or not.
Mm.
Now, yes, and I do agree with you. It's confusing, and there's so much in the media, particularly where you are not very conversant with the law.
Yeah.
You are likely going to be confused. Um, Yes, I do agree. With the exception of specific industries such as the health, the health sector in particular, the construction industry. The rest of there is no mandate for the other industries. There is a specific list. This is not to say the government is not going to there may never be directions in the future as
Yeah.
to add
To the other
other
industries.
activities, but there are specific industries at the moment. So unless you work in such industries, and you mentioned your wife who works as a nurse,
Mm.
yes, she must vaccinate unless she can give a particular reason. Now, there is a human rights issue that comes into this, and that's really if you get sacked and you want to file for a human a complaint based on the
Unfair
breach of
dismissal.
human rights. Yes, and the Equal Opportunity Act in Victoria protects. That's the main legislation that protects
Employers.
the citizens against discrimination, and it's
Yeah.
what they call the protected attributes. So if you believe you are a person of a protected attribute, for example, because of your race, and you believe, or let's say for political belief in that matter, that you
Yeah.
are of a certain political belief, and you do not, and your political beliefs makes you not want to accept that vaccine. You don't accept vaccination. Um, so it's there, it's protected, but the chances of you in this, particularly where the legislation itself, that is the equal opportunity legislation, has exceptions,
Mm.
makes exceptions where it's what is called positive discrimination. You may never succeed. So if you say you're going to rely on your political beliefs, and clearly there's a direction made by the chief health officer that it's in the public interest for people to be vaccinated, it is unlikely that you are going to succeed. You may claim to have been discriminated against if you refuse to administration of vaccine based on religious belief. So there are some protections, but
Hmm.
these protections become particularly more difficult and more complex to navigate
Mm.
when there is a direction that has been issued
The
by the
government.
health officer.
Yeah. So that's where the problem is. But I suppose one of the issues that where these mandatory vaccination are being asked,
Mm,
um, the whether it's the government or even the businesses are not actually telling, because if you are told you have to vaccinate or lose the job. I've heard people, some of them have even sent me messages where they're saying that they are being asked not to come to job, but they are not specifically being given any notice of dismissal,
mm,
that they are being dismissed. So
mm,
and I think that's possibly a strategy from either the businesses or the government, not to formally dismiss people who are not vaccinating, but still give them in some sort of limbo. Shouldn't if there is an order or a mandate from the government uh, requiring people to vaccinate, and then employees do not want to vaccinate, shouldn't they be given a letter saying, okay, because you refuse to abide by XYZ, therefore your employment is terminated?
mm. Look, it's I think it's early days. Things will pan out as we go.
Mm.
Um, um, Even in terms of litigation, at the moment there's very little in terms of litigation,
Mm.
and that's because it's still early on. As we go, we are likely going to see more more such cases either being taken to the Fair Work Commission, or even
Mm.
to the federal court, or to particular state courts here in Victoria. So if there's a direction that has been issued mandating vaccination in a particular industry, and at the moment they're just sending letters to people, we've
Yeah.
got to also understand that there are serious mental health implications at
Mm.
the moment, where people are experiencing all difficult sort of things. People do not know what even the government itself,
Not quite sure.
to be cautious on what people are dealing with.
Yeah.
So, as I said, it's early days, and I think whatever approach that has been taken at the moment, I think it takes into account of what people might be going through. And these are precaution measures, I would believe. But as people go, and the workforce in that particular industry is say 90% vaccinated, and you are the only person who comes to your workplace, and you are a disability worker and you are not vaccinated, I think there will be that decision that and the employer will have to make to terminate employment of that person,
Mm.
because clearly that person is exposed to to contracting COVID, and then bringing COVID back into the workplace. So
Yeah.
these things will pan out as we go, and we will have a better picture, a clearer picture. In the next, it might not even be the next few weeks. It could be months until
Yeah.
it's clear. When we get to 80% or even 85 or 90%, the other 10% that remains are the people that are objecting to vaccinations, or
Mm.
people that have genuine reasons, which then the government will, the authorities will have to consider whether they'll be excused or not. So things will become clearer as we get to that 80% or 85% or 90% mark. Perhaps in December, or even early next year.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think there'll be more, especially if there's at least one case that ends up in high court,
Mm,
and we see what the high court says, because ultimately that's where we get some clarity. I was watching a report by ABC yesterday in Queensland, for example, where the police commissioner had required all the police force to vaccinate, and then
mm,
there's quite a bunch who have not accepted the vaccinate, and they are
mm,
sort of um, they are questioning that mandates on legal purposes. But and one of the lawyers who was interviewed in the process said it's unlikely they will succeed, because it's it's things have to amount to potentially changing the constitution or something, which I wish I didn't understand much why
mm.
that was needed. But it looks like opinions are quite divided between those who
Mm.
think that
It is, and I do agree. Even within the legal profession,
yeah.
it's not possible at the moment to pinpoint that this is the direction cases will go.
Mm.
And there are so many authorities, just so many jurisdictions that are involved here.
Mm.
We could be speaking about employment, which then falls within the Commonwealth jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So you would
Yes.
have to go to the Fair Work Commission, and then the federal court, the single judge, full bench,
Yeah.
um, or this could be a discrimination issue, which also could fall under the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth under the Race Discrimination Act, or it could be a state-based issue, which falls under the Equal Opportunity Act, or it's a human rights issue. So, so at the moment, or it purely could be a constitutional issue, which then we don't know. We can't speculate at the moment. But I do agree with you. Even within the legal profession, there's no agreement. It's not possible to agree where things are going to go. So I haven't seen that particular interview in Queensland,
Yeah.
but as far as the law here in Victoria is
Totally.
based, and as the general understanding about vaccination, I can categorically state that it's a matter of the state law, and it will be mostly be viewed as such.
Absolutely. Okay. Just reminding those watching that you're watching African Knowledge, and we're having a discussion with Maker Mayek, who's a lawyer, and it's about both the issues of mandatory vaccination and its employment implications for people who either can't get vaccinated for some medical reasons or do not wish to get vaccinated, and how they're going to go with that. So whether they'll lose their employment or they have any recourse in relation to this. And then later on, we'll be talking about family violence and some of these there are new dispositions that have come to place in many states in relation to this. And we'll talk specifically about Victoria. So if you have a question, we encourage you to ask it. You can make a comment. You can also call us if you wish to. We'll put the number on the screen for you. Okay, maybe just one or two questions quickly before we finish this, and then we can go to the next.
Yes.
Where the employer, I mean, actually, what happens when uh, if the employee says, okay, you've asked me to be vaccinated, I want you to suppose give me some sort of report on risk assessment that you have conducted to make sure that this vaccination is safe, and then the employer possibly doesn't give that, and or they give and the employee keeps on questioning some of those details of the report. Eventually, they might end up in some sort of uh, deadlock where the employer may not be able to prove that the person has no risk in taking the vaccine, and eventually, if the employer sacks the employee, will the employee be entitled to any compensation or package for being dismissed?
I think we've got to be careful trying to provide legal advice, because we don't want people to take
Yeah,
things quite literally,
literally, yeah, that's right.
especially when there is some sort of entitlement that
Yeah,
they are entitled to some sort of recourse. But obviously, every citizen, every resident, every Victorian is entitled to legal representation. It is your right.
yeah,
You can seek recourse in law if you believe you've been shortchanged, or or you, generally speaking, you believe that you've been unfairly dismissed, or certain things have not been people have not been fair to you. You should be open to seek legal recourse. You should speak to lawyers who will look into your particular case and advise you based on the particulars of your case with respect to law. I think that's how best we should do it, rather than putting it point blank that people will be entitled to certain things. But
okay.
there are rights under different legislations in this state. Under the
Mm,
Commonwealth law, people have rights to pursue anybody to an institution where they believe they've been unfairly treated, or they've been discriminated against, or they've been unfairly dismissed. So the laws are there to protect all of us, and if you should not feel that you must comply for fear that you will not be protected. You will be protected, but that does not necessarily mean you will succeed with a certain claim. If
mm,
you're bold enough to refuse to take vaccine based on certain beliefs that are entrenched within your own conscience, then you should be also bold enough to challenge government decisions
mm.
that you believe will affect you. So people, there are so many lawyers of African background, and we've had the lawyers on this show in the recent past,
Yes,
and yeah, and you will get that advice. And I think, my position is you should seek that advice where you believe you've been unfairly treated.
sure. All right. We'll rest this issue for now because obviously there are many unknowns.
Mm,
We have known
absolutely.
unknowns and unknown unknowns.
Sounds like Donald Rumsfeld.
Exactly that what I was gonna say. Known unknowns and known knowns and unknown knowns and all
Absolutely.
that.
Yes, it is completely. It's an uncharted territory.
Yeah,
Uh, it's one that we're still, all of us are still trying to navigate.
Yeah.
but all I can say to our viewers is that the laws are there to protect you. If you believe because of certain beliefs that you don't want to take vaccine, or you are strongly against a vaccine, seek that advice
Mm.
before you make any decision, so that once you go to your employer, you go to your employer fully armed with the right instruments
Yeah.
to go and argue your case.
Okay. Now let's go into the second topic of the night, which is about family violence.
Mm,
Perhaps I would ask you to give us a little bit of a sort of legal um, rundown of some of the issues surrounding family violence. I know it could be a pretty broad topic, but I understand right now almost every state in Australia is taking this issue quite seriously.
mm,
And I was reading something in the news lately, for example, that in Victoria, crime has reduced a bit, but I mean, crime statistics, the rate of criminal activity, but there's a big increase in terms of family violence offending, and we had a royal commission, I think, about a year or two ago here in Victoria in relation to family violence. How serious is that, legally speaking?
mm. The simple answer, Clyde, is that very, very, very serious. I believe the statistics at the moment are there is one woman dies every I think is it every week in
Hmm.
the hands of man, violence perpetrated by a man. Obviously, domestic violence can come in all from either men
Women.
or women, but it's largely known to come from men,
Hmm.
uh, and it is a scourge on the Australian society as a whole. Um, and I believe, although we do not have particular statistics, I think because of the level of disadvantage within the African community,
Mm.
because of the resettlement issues that people face, because of poverty, because of financial constraints, and and so many things that inflict to us as
Hmm.
a community uh, uh, that is finding its feet in this country. I would say the levels of domestic violence would be quite high in the African community itself.
Yes.
So it's a real scourge in Australia across it's a real problem across the country. Um, and there have been efforts to try to control this. Every state has got its own legislation.
Yeah.
Over the last couple of years, there has been a joint effort to have a national domestic violence register. So what this means is um, if you there is an intervention order taken out, that is a family violence or FVO taken out in Victoria, which imposes certain restrictions um, on the husband or
Mm.
the former partner, then those restrictions will also apply in other states, regardless where you go in Australia. So if you have a full non-contact order issued in Victoria, and you go to Western Australia to a wedding in Western Australia, and you meet your partner in Western Australia, or your former partner in Western Australia in a wedding, the same those restrictions will still apply. If you are not
Mm.
required in Victoria to be anything close to 200 meters, to be 200 meters apart from your partner, your former partner, you will also be required for the same thing will apply in Western Australia in that particular scenario where you're in. And it's the any breach of family violence orders, it becomes a criminal offense.
Mm.
Although the legislation in particular is a civil one, which is one between between the protected person, that is the person, either the person that has made the application or the protected persons.
Mm,
If the application has been made by the police, then and it's the wife who has called the police, then the wife and the children for the interim order will be included in the application as protected persons.
mm,
And then the husband or the boyfriend or the partner will become the respondent.
mm,
So so and then it will go to the next stage where it will be the particular facts, particulars of the case will be looked into, and mostly people, the couples do come into consent orders, agree um, uh, to be apart from each other. But where particulars of the case are disputed, then the parties can go into a hearing
mm,
for making of the final orders. Everybody will make their case. You come with your lawyer, she comes with her lawyer. You make your case, and then the magistrate will be persuaded based on the particular facts of that case, and then a decision is made. If a decision is made that a final order is issued for a full no contact, or the conditions have been varied, then those conditions either apply for a minimum of 12 months, 18 months, or 24 months, which then the protected person or persons can apply later on to vary them and extend them to a period of time. So
mm.
any attempt or failure to adhere or respect the orders that have been
Conditions.
issued by the court
Yeah.
amounts to a criminal offense. It becomes a breach of the family violence order, and
Mm.
therefore you can be prosecuted, and you are most likely going to be prosecuted and sent to prison.
Yeah, and I understand there's quite a few people in our communities who are getting caught in that because some people don't take that as seriously as they should, and it looks like it's raising. Obviously, the issue of the reasons and the causes of family violence are one thing, and then the actual legal aspect of being able to
Yes.
respect the restraining orders and everything issued by the court is another. Do you think that the fact that for any number of reasons, as you mentioned before, that our communities are affected by even some people have limited education, others have had a whole host of other things that do not allow them to fully comprehend the seriousness and nature of some of these things, that is a big problem that needs to be addressed?
You've quite clearly said, Clyde, that looking at the facts or the arguments of what materialized or what happened leading to to violence or allegations or accusations of violence being made, it's one thing on one hand, but the legal aspects where violence or incidents of violence or allegations of violence have been founded, and the law has taken its course, and an interim order or a final order has been issued by the magistrate's court, then really you need to separate the two things. You might argue very strongly that this is not what happened, and particularly I find this with the interim when the interim orders are made. Uh,
Mm,
People, especially the affected person that has been that's prevented from that is prevented from actually going to the family home and so forth, will say, but this is not what happened. Why would an order be issued when my case has not been heard? No, what has happened is an accusation has been made, and given family violence is a real scourge, it's a real problem in the society. The police then take the step
mm,
to issue what is called an interim order. Okay, an interim order, that is, there is no finding yet as to the allegations that have been made, but a person has expressed fear, whether this is a fear, physical fear, fear of physical violence, or fear of psychological violence. Okay,
Mm.
they don't want to be close. They don't want to be close to you. They don't want to meet with you. They don't want to talk to you. Okay, and this is why they're seeking to be protected first until their case is heard by the magistrate's court.
Mm.
I find it particularly this is where mistakes are made, where at the level of interim orders, people do because of the sentimental issues that are involved with the
Mm-hmm.
with the particulars of the allegations that have been made, and people tend to forget the interim order is a different animal altogether.
Mm.
You've got to be really careful. If it has been issued, the best possible way to do this is for you to get yourself a lawyer, because um, an interim order or even a final order allows you to do what is allowed under the Family Law Act, which is where there are children of a relationship. Okay, whether this is a de facto relationship, this is where people do not have marriage certificates, or these are a married couple. Okay, uh, the family law allows you to do what is allowed under that law. What that means is you have to, and the best way to do this is to see a legal practitioner, to see a lawyer. Okay,
Mm.
that practices in family law, or the lawyer that is representing you in the family violence application. Okay, you say uh, I did not. There are no accusations that I've done this or that. There are no allegations that I've tried that I've heard or I've tried to hurt my children. Therefore, I don't. I should not be prevented from my children. The lawyer
Mm.
will make this case before the magistrate. I've recently done the same. It says as recent as this morning,
Mm.
saying the children should not be part of this application, and that was accepted because there was no allegation that was made that the children are part of it, or
Mm-hmm.
where the allegations that have been made do not have a foundation, are basically do not have legs to stand on. You can make your case before the magistrate and say your children. It's in the best interest of the children that the children are removed as protected persons from the family violence application,
Mm.
and or the order, the interim order, or the final order, whatever, whichever applies, is applicable all the time, and you will be given that right. If that does not happen, do not despair. There are other ways to do this. Your lawyer is always allowed to communicate with the other party, with the protected person.
Mm.
So if you want to see the children, you can organize some sort of supervision as you fight against the allegations that have been made against you. You could potentially accept that the family violence application is entered, and then go to the family court, because all the intervention applications, what they do is to protect people. Okay,
Mm.
they are there only to protect people. But where you want specific orders to be made in relation to the care and upbringing of the children, you go to the Federal Circuit Court under the Family Law Act. Okay, and this is a court that will now look into the entire evidence of what
Mm.
has been alleged, and the court is always is fair. The family law is always fair. There's no such a thing as favoring a woman, or favoring a man. It's
But
it's you
I may interrupt you there, just to
yes.
ask a quick question in that process. There is a perception, real or not, but that the whole system sort of works more towards women, protecting women, or giving some sort of advantage to women, than men, even when that is not necessarily the case. I do understand with that, and I agree with the proposition you put forward before that in most cases, family violence is actually perpetrated by men, but
Mm.
not just and the actual reasons that it happens, can be explained in many ways. But the whole system seems to be a little bit skewed and more towards giving more advantages to women than men. And a lot of people in the community, especially within African community, for example, lament that sort of thing. What's your view on that?
I think it's important to recognize that there are views within the community, and this is not just even in the African community alone. It's
Mm,
in the wider Australian society.
yeah.
You must have come across, and our viewers must have come across this commission. Though I think Pauline Hanson was part of it, and others.
Yeah.
And there was a recommendation to merge the family court and the federal circuit court, and there were all these things that were happening. I practice I practice in the federal circuit court or in the family court under the Family Law Act. I practice there. I have cases that are currently before that court.
Mm,
What I can say is that is merely a perception. It's
okay.
not true. The way it happens is the person that will make the application, which is what is called you initiate an application. Most applications are initiated in the federal circuit court.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more complex ones go to the family court, which seems to handle the cases at the higher level. So
Mm-hmm.
once an application has been initiated, uh, it's supported with an affidavit. Okay, the person that has filed an application in the federal circuit court or in the family court supports it with what is called an affidavit. An affidavit is basically your statement of facts,
Mm-hmm.
outlining what happened, and then you attach evidence. Okay, whether in terms of if you say somebody beat you, beat you up, and you suffered serious injuries. And you captured and you went to see the doctor, you attach medical records and whatever the pictures that you've taken and so forth, so whatever evidence that you'll be relying on. And then the other person who is now becomes the respondent uh, will file a response, and their response will be supported with an affidavit. Okay, and that affidavit is also a statement of facts for you to say your version of the story, what exactly happened. If you have text messages, there were people that were there,
So you can present your
name.
counter evidence.
Yes, yeah, that is your evidence. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
this evidence will now be put before the judge.
Yeah.
Okay, so the wife might be asking that she does not she wants a supervised contact for the husband with the children.
Mm.
Right, okay, but it's up to you to respond to say no. That is, why should I have a supervised contact with my children when there is no allegation or there is no evidence that I did anything wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And you explain it from your part of the story. All these documents will be placed before the judge, and then it goes to the next stage where there is what is called a conciliation conference. Two parties will be brought together by the registrar of the court and say, okay, let's try to, if it's about the children, let's try to talk about it. If we can come to an agreement before you spend a lot of money on lawyers, very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if it succeeds, you make orders. Your lawyers as well will negotiate, will enter into negotiations, try to settle it because it's very expensive. There's no need to keep fighting for something that can be resolved.
Mm-hmm.
So and then it goes from one stage to the other stage. Now that's the practice in the federal circuit court or in the family court. That is completely removed from perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a fair chance to present their case. But obviously, uh, these cases are conducted in an environment where the couple are um, have pent up anger or emotions, sentiments are involved. There are lots of accusations, there are arguments, and so forth. One person will lose it at some point, um, because of the of these sentiments. That person will go out there and and say was treated unfairly by the court, or this person is not able to pay for private lawyers who are very expensive to represent their case properly, or to look after them
Mm.
really well. Uh, if that happens, there will be a perception at some point that you were not treated fairly. So there are some valid arguments out there in terms of where these perceptions, where they come from, but
Mm.
they are merely perceptions. That's not the practice in the court. It's a very fair court, and it's often one that is presided over by very, very experienced judges
Judges.
that probably have practiced even in the as family lawyers for very over 30 years,
Yeah.
or practice in other jurisdictions.
Okay.
So that's the nature of the court.
All right. Well, as we get towards the end of the show, perhaps maybe just some sort of advice, or even some tips or information you want to give to people who may be already perhaps involved in a family violence sort of dispute, or in general, to educate people on the most important aspect of sort of handling allegations of family violence and all
Yeah.
that sort of thing in court.
Correct. Look, it's as I've said before, Clyde. Family violence is a scourge in our society. I'm not a family violence advocate, so I'm not going to go into to the numbers and the semantics of what the numbers are out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know how the law operates. It could appear to be unfair at some point, but trust me, if you take your time to follow up with your lawyers, uh, you will get your fair shot. If you believe accusations that have been made against you are not correct, or they are made up, then see lawyers. You also have to remember this: family violence. It's not only physical violence. Okay.
Mm.
If you believe that just because you did not punch your wife, or you did not cause a physical injury, uh, that you did not commit family violence. I've seen cases where men have refused to give bank cards. They've retained bank cards, and refuse and only give their wives some money when they go shopping.
Mm.
That is violence. Um, when you basically, you've retained your wife's bank card, and she's supposed to be keeping it to be buying groceries and essentials for the children, because in our African community, our women are very studious and they look after these things very well. But if
Mm-hmm.
you retain the bank card and you only give her $200, uh, for you trying to control and manage, how things work, that will constitute violence under the Family Violence Act. If you all you do every day, come back from wherever you come from, you do not help her with the hard chore, the house chores, with the kids, and then after a long night, you have an expectation of a warm food to be on the table, and then when you come back, there's no food, and then you start abusing her, you're mistreating her, you're giving her silence treatment, you ostracize her from you. That is psychological violence. If you say you're going to do this to a family in Africa, or you're going, this and that, and then so that she has that fear. If she goes against you, you will exact whatever you've the threat that you've made to a family. That is family violence. An order can be issued against you for that. So
And
there are so many things
yeah,
that form family violence. It's not only physical violence.
and I can mention a case quickly where a friend of mine told me that one of his cousin has gone to Africa and married another woman.
Mhm.
Didn't tell the wife that he was going to marry another woman. He ended up marrying, and when he came back, he told the wife he had married because that's kind of custom in his particular country. And then he
Mhm.
started every night he was having a conversation on the phone with the woman that he's married, and the wife filed for family violence
Yeah,
in that in that circumstance. I don't know whether the wife was successful or not, but would you see that as some type of violence?
I can tell you. I can tell you off the bat. That's psychological violence. It's how you feel as a person. If, say, for example, and if you were to rotate the roles, change the roles around,
Yeah,
your wife going to marry, whilst she has a choice to go and marry someone else, and say, Clyde, you either accept to be a co-husband or you leave. What
yeah,
you will feel after that, it's the psychological impact of the treatment that you've had, a treatment that you deserve, you do not deserve. uh, the 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 impact, the mental health aspect of it, that you feel, how you will feel psychologically after that. That is family violence, under the legislation. Or say, for instance, you're threatened, you either accept to be a co-husband, or you leave. It's equals to intimidation.
mm,
It can be, or you are constantly told, Clyde, you better send my mom $800 every month, otherwise I'm going to leave you.
mm,
That is, you're being harassed, you're being intimidated. It becomes a psychological violence. It's exactly that as well. How the husband has left secretly to go to Africa and marries a second wife,
mm.
and has used the resources from the family, the resources that would have been used to look after to take care of the children. Now those resources, we know African marriages are not free. You come from the West, and there's an expectation that you've come with a lot of money, and
Yeah, you
all
gotta
this
have the
happens.
dollars.
Yes, and that you expand, you are spending money on this, not on your family, and this money should be going to your family, and probably this is a common wealth, family wealth, family money that you are using to marry the second wife, and then you come back and tell your wife, this is what I've done, and it's cost me this much. The wife will succeed with an application to say, I don't want to see you since you made that decision. I don't want to see you near me. And she can put this as evidence of psychological violence. And
Yeah.
it does constitute psychological violence.
Well, yeah, things can get very tricky here in this country. That's why it's important to be familiar with these sort of things. And perhaps one last thing in the same context, I remember when someone I knew was having issue with their wife at home, and there was an issue of family violence that ended up in court. They were saying that uh, if you have a look at what happens prior to uh, issues escalating and ending up in court, uh, there is a lot of violence in the family, but as we said earlier, a lot of it falls on men. While this friend of mine was saying that women an issue of violence as well, because but they use their mouth while men use hands, and eventually they use physical violence, which is easy to prove. But the violence from the from the mouth of the women in the way they talk and address men is not always acknowledged. So what do you think about that?
I think we will have to. Uh, I think that is a bit tricky. It's tricky in the sense that
It's hard to
um,
prove anyway,
we,
isn't
we
it?
might we might that will have to be addressed from the point of view that you're a husband, you're a man, you expect to be addressed in a certain manner.
Yeah.
So your marriage or your relationship has preconditions, and if those preconditions are not met, then likely you will feel attacked, you will feel disrespected, you will feel that uh, you're not treated with the utmost respect that you're
You
supposed
deserve.
to have in your household. So
Mm.
so look, this is a very tricky issue. I would have to be very careful in how I address the issue in terms of having personal views.
Yeah.
Um, because I think when you're asking my personal review, but my personal view is uh, regardless of what you believe has been said to you, there is no excuse for physical violence.
Yeah.
Because you are limited with your words, you cannot use your words, but you cannot use your words as much as your wife uses words. So
Yeah.
you're only
You can use your hands.
you resort to physical violence. I think that's a criminal offense. You will
Yeah.
be charged with an assault for battery. You will be charged with the battery,
Yeah.
and it will look very ugly for you. So my view is there is no excuse, and there is no excuse for that.
Yeah.
Regardless what happens, if you feel you've been verbally attacked, perhaps and I'm not advising people to attack each other verbally, but you could also use words, and if you can't use words, then you might as well you might feel you want to remove yourself from that situation.
Hmm.
Uh, that is untenable. So
Yeah.
people have different coping mechanisms, and there are people that will that will take it and have things resolved at a later date. But my
Yeah.
my advice is there is no excuse, regardless of what the situation is. You've been verbally attacked, and you feel inadequate, and you think you can resort to physical violence. I don't
It's
agree
not
with that,
acceptable.
and it's not acceptable.
Absolutely. Well, it's not acceptable to use violence against other people. Obviously, if you do, you will face the consequences of the law. And I suppose that's part of you just mentioned about how people are coping with uncomfortable situations, and it's because somehow many of us may have been framed or conditioned to respond in threatening or unpleasant situations in some ways that we end up necessarily using violence. But there are many ways of actually addressing those sort of things without resorting to violence. So that is it for tonight. We will probably talk about this issue in the future, because it's one that is affecting the communities quite a lot. And there's obviously the issue of why violence is happening in the first place, and then the legal aspects of things. Thank you very much, Makere, for your time to Africa Media Australia on this African Knowledge Show. We appreciate your time as usual.
Thank you,
And
Clyde. It's a pleasure.
all right. We'll see you in about 4 weeks for another episode of Lawyers Night on African Knowledge. And thank you very much. And those who watching us, we do appreciate you taking the time to watch. And there was a lot of people watching, but nobody asked questions. So looks like it looks like everybody's comfortable, or maybe it's tricky to ask.
They can always reach out to me. I'm on the social media. I'm quite
Yeah,
active on the social media, and can always reach out. And if you have a question, you can go to our website and send us emails, and and they can reach out to you and get my number. So
yeah,
that's fine. We're there, and my numbers are publicly available. They
yeah.
could obtain, and if you have particular questions that you want to be addressed, or you want some legal advice or legal representation in a way, we're always there to
And,
help in the
and
best way
and
that we
just
can.
remind us of your legal firm again, if people want to find you.
So my practice is Mayek Legal, Mayek Legal, and
Yeah,
we're based in Footscray on 123 Hopkins Street in Footscray. So if you even type it on Facebook, it will come on Mayek Legal, Mayek Legal. It will
yeah.
come on Facebook or on Google. There will be a lot of hits out there.
Information.
You'll find me.
Absolutely. And if you can't find him, well, come to us. We'll find him for you. That's absolutely
Absolutely,
guaranteed.
always available. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you
Clive.
very much. All right.
All right,
Thanks,
goodbye.
Mark.
All right,
All right,
bye bye.
guys. That's all for tonight. Thank you.